Hi TYB, well welcome to the Song of Songs, and I'm so proud of you that you are studying this book, because this book is such an incredible book. It's a book of love and really delving into that emotional side of our lives. For me, I'm not really a poetry song person, so I find studying these sort of texts a little hard, and if that's you, congratulations. Come with me as we really venture into this style of writing. As I'm reading it, I'm genuinely trying to tap into my emotional side, and I have to say, and I say this about every book, it's been a beautiful adventure of just seeing how God puts everything in our Bible. There's history in our Bible. There is, teaching lessons in our Bible. There's letters in our Bible. There's Job and trial and suffering in our Bible. And there is a part of our life that we have to stop and say there's love and desire. And the love and desire is placed in our Bible. It's part of our Christian walk. We're not too holy to feel like this. And I love that God has put this fullness in our Bible for us to go, you know what, this is part of your life. So really jump into that. Now, where are we? As you go to have a look at your table of contents, what we've done is we've gone through the historical text. So we're at just after Nehemiah, we start into the writings, and this Song of Songs is put in the writing section. Esther, Job, Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Song of Songs. It's the last writing book in our Bible, but just before we hit the prophet section. Okay, so that's where you're going to find it. It's in the Old Testament. That's where you're going to find it in your Bible. Now, in the Hebrew Bible, it's a little bit different because they put the books that they have in their Bible in different orders. So we're in wisdom literature. Now, wisdom literature is such a great thing to study. If you want to go off on a tangent, study wisdom literature. Can I give you some books on how to study that? Great book. This is up on the website. The Tree of Life is an exploration of biblical wisdom literature. Wisdom literature goes through the hard things and questions that really confront us in our life. So it's like things like, where did I come from? Where am I going? What's the meaning of life? How does love fit into this? What's the nature of love? How can I know God? It's really wrestling, what about suffering and things like this? Christianity really needs to be on the cutting edge of these questions, because the society around us is crying out for these answers, and the Bible gives us the answers. So if you really want to study wisdom literature, there's some great text that you can study in that. Now, where are we? So in the Hebrew Bible, this is in the wisdom literature, we've got the writings consists in the writing section of the Hebrew Bible. So we've got Daniel, Chronicles, Ezra, Nehemiah, Job, Psalms, Proverbs, and then the 5 scrolls, which is Song of Songs, Ruth, Lamentations, Ecclesiastes, and Esther. Now, I said this when we studied Lamentations, that the 5 scrolls are read out at their festivals, at their Jewish festivals, as a sense of knowing God, as a sense of remembrance in God. So this beautiful, Lamentations is a sense of mourning in God. So I love that these books, like I said, Lamentations really discovers the heart of mourning and repentance, and this one discovers the heart of love and desire. So jump into this. So much to highlight. I'm so much to highlight. You're going to have highlighted cramp, trasher cramp, because it just there's so much poetry, there's so much expression of nature. So let's jump in. Who wrote this? You're probably sick of this, TYB. This answer, but they don't really know who wrote it because they didn't sign it. No, that's all right. It says Solomon's Song of Songs at the top of our Bible. So most of the scholars say, look at Solomon. And therefore, we were dated about 10th century BC. And the thing about Solomon writing this is Solomon is a key figure in the in the Old Testament, and Solomon is a king of extravagance and wealth. And this king of extravagance and wealth knows the heart of love and passion and desire. And I don't know how he does, because he's got so many wives, 700 wives and 200 concubines, obviously so much beyond our cultural aspect today. But when you study the heart of Solomon, this man was incredibly wise. He knows about trade and he knows about art, and he's in all of this stuff, and he creates this poem. So now there are some debates around that. You can have a look at those. There are some debates also around the style and the writing and how it was put together, the compilation of the text. Now, some say, and most say, the complete poem was originated in the time of Solomon, 10th century, and then it was later sort of updated. Like Proverbs, same thing, and some of the other writings were written and then they were updated. And so there are some of these language in the text style that are a little bit more recent than 10th century, and they're like, well, that it can't be written in 10th century. Well, most people believe that the original poem, and this is a song, remember this is a song, so the original song was written in the 10th century and then it was later updated. So we do have some more recent literary styles in the text. Now, as I said, the traditional title is Song of Songs, Song of Solomon. We've got Song of Songs in here, same thing. It's just this beautiful Hebrew poem. Now, let's find out about Solomon. Let me grab my Bible and find out about this beautiful king. When we find out about the people in the Bible, what you do is you go back and have a read of them, because you'll find in the history sections, it will tell you about them. So I'm looking for 1 Kings at the moment. And what I'm going to do is read 1 Kings. He is part of the kings. We know that Solomon is David's son. And I love that Solomon is David's son, but Solomon is the son of David and Bathsheba. And Bathsheba is where David had the affair with Bathsheba while she's, which you, as you do, you know, having a bath on the roof. And David, who is supposed to be at war, looks down and ends up having an affair with her. Not an affair, but, you know, ends up sleeping with her. And Bathsheba and David produced Solomon, and this is this lineage and this king, and he becomes the wisest king. You can read this in 1 Kings. I'm going to put my glasses on so I can see this. But in 1 Kings 2, we have his life. And then let me read you this section of, I'm in 1 Kings 10. You can jump there with me. Verse 23, King Solomon was greater in riches and wisdom than all the other kings of the earth. The whole world sought audience with Solomon to hear the wisdom God had put in his heart. Year after year, everyone who came brought a gift, articles of silver and gold, robes, weapons, spices, horses, and mules. Solomon accumulated chariots, horses. He had 1,400 chariots, 12,000 horses, which he kept in chariot cities, and also with him in Jerusalem. Now let me keep going. King Solomon, however, loved many women. This is in chapter 11. Many foreign women besides Pharaoh's daughter. So he actually ended up, they say, marrying Pharaoh's daughter. He ended up having a relationship with the Queen of Sheba. So he had Moabites, Ammonites, Edomites, all these different foreign women. They were from nations about which the Lord had told the Israelites, you must not intermarry with them, because they will surely turn your hearts to other gods. Nevertheless, Solomon held fast to them in love. He had 700 wives of royal birth and 300 concubines, and his wives led him astray. Unfortunately, this love that we're going to see in this poem was the very thing that turned his heart against God. And so some say this was written to Pharaoh's daughter, as a poem of love to her. Some say it's actually part of this wedding song. Some say it was written to maybe, you know, Queen of Sheba, but they don't know. The thing that we know about this, whoever he wrote this to, was how she describes herself. And listen to this I'm back in Song of Songs 1:6. It says, do not stare at me because I am dark, because I am darkened by the sun. My mother's sons were angry with me and made me take care of the vineyards. My own vineyard I had to neglect. Tell me, you whom I love, where you graze from your flock and where you rest your sheep at midday. And it talks about her being dark. Now, to be dark in these times meant that you worked in the sun. So we know she's from a lower class. You know, remember Cleopatra bathed in milk to make her skin whiter. And so we know that she is saying, do not stare at me because I'm dark, because this woman is working in the field. So we don't know, you know, it's hard to say who this beautiful woman is. And he describes her in such imagery that she's obviously very beautiful and in his eyes just gorgeous, which is just so lovely. Okay. So as we go through, there's different ways you can look at this text, and I'm going to go through them because it's a great way of learning how to read the Bible. We're going to go through allegory, we're going to go through typology, we're going to go through whether it's a drama, whether it's natural, just straight love story, and have a look at it as a poem. Let me talk to you about the first one, which is an allegory. Now, this is basically to say one thing and mean another. And most people find that Song of Songs for them is quite confronting. It's quite, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm talking to my mum and dad about sex. It's just a bit weird. So most people say, look, it says this, but it means something else. It says that it's between a he and a she and two lovers, but it actually means something more spiritual than that. Some say it's Solomon is represented in this text as Yahweh, and it's Yahweh and Israel, or Christ and his bride. And what they do is kind of ignore the historical aspects of it, ignore the male and female section of it, and the nature of the text, and they put it into God and Israel and Christ and the church. It's not a bad way of reading it. If you feel uncomfortable with being involved in this love relationship, then that's a beautiful, and it's a great way to read it, not wrong. The issue with reading it that way is don't take it too far, because Solomon's mentioned in here, and it talks about, in 3, it says, look on King Solomon wearing a crown, and Solomon's actually mentioned in the text. So there's real names and real places in it, which means we can't take that too far in this text. We can't say it's written for the author. He didn't write it for Christ and the church, because that's New Testament thinking. So it's okay to do that, but just don't take that too far. Now, typology, where allegory doesn't recognize the historical nature of the text. Typology recognizes that the historical fact of the Old Testament, that this was written possibly by Solomon for a specific reason, and then uses this point to project it forward into Christ and the New Testament. So it says, yeah, this is written, but it's like reading Isaiah 53, and we read Isaiah 53 and go, wow, that's projecting forward to Christ. Now we are reading it on this side of Christ looking backwards. So the people in this time wouldn't possibly, they would have thought suffering servant Israel or the Messiah. So what you do in typology is you recognize the historical nature of it, and then you project it forward to the New Testament. Does that make sense? So yeah, we go from God, the Lord, and Israel, examining the relationship with God and Israel and his beloved. It's beautiful. Each verse you read through the journey of how he loves Israel and God's real heart. And you've got to know that that's God. Our God isn't a judge that sits there and he is in love with his church. He is in love with the nation of Israel. And this is what some people say, God and Israel. Now, the next one would be Christ and his bride. This is each verse, you would study it and see how Christ is the one on the mountains that comes down. He's the one knocking at the door saying, come in, I'm here, please let me in. And then you don't get out of bed. And, this girl is too lazy. I love it how she says, oh, I've got stuff on my feet already. It's like, when you do your moisturizer at night, it's like, well, I've moisturized my hands. I don't want to get out. And she doesn't go to the door. And if this is Christ, then it's that moment that he tells you to get out of bed and pray and come and be with him, and you don't, and then in the morning you just feel so bad, and then you got to go and seek him. So each verse you read through Christological, this Christ and the church. And this is a great example, because in Psalm 45 and Hebrews 1:8, have a look at those. It parallels this love song is applied to Christ and his church. Psalm 45, this beautiful love song, and Hebrews 1:8 actually parallels it. So this has been done before, and it's a beautiful way. Now, drama. Some say, and in AD 250, Origen actually spoke of the Song of Solomon as being a marriage song, and Solomon wrote it as a drama. Now, if you are a dramatic person, this is a beautiful way. You can imagine doing the set and everything like that. I have to say it's a little boring. If you can make it creatively, that's amazing. It just has the same script over and over again. So I don't know about it being a drama, because I don't think it would be very interesting as a drama, but I'm sure you could make it. Now, natural literal interpretation, a series of poems from two young lovers expressing their desires, fears, hopes, and dreams. And this is a beautiful way of reading it. Guys, I'm going to address this in the dive to say that some Christians go, oh, you can't read it like that, I mean, especially the part where he says, says, I will climb your tree. And, you know, it's really this beautiful expression. Love and sex and desire and all of this sort of stuff is part of our Christianity. It's part of our life, God ordained. So don't feel bad about celebrating it. If you're single, be careful. You know, it says do not awaken something. Don't awaken love before it's time. So if you're single, don't, maybe just stay with Christ in the church sort of thing. But if you're in a beautiful marriage, then this is a beautiful expression of what God has given you, a celebration of love. It's a love poem full of parallelism, vineyards and fruit, lots of fruit, you know, figs and, I mean, oh my gosh, whoever wrote it, vineyards and fruit and it's just an absolute beautiful, spices and lions and fawns and gazelles, just really get involved in the imagery. Now, this is a common ancient Near East way of expressing love. You know, it's like the Hallmark card. Everyone wrote these beautiful love poems. It was the rendezvous of the two lovers in the vineyard, or in, you know, escaping their parents' eye and going and having these rendezvous in gardens and parks, and all of these love poetries had lots of figs and nature and all of that stuff, which this one has beautifully. Now, it'll speak of the location. Our location is Jerusalem. Some of the love poems in the ancient Near East were Egypt and the Nile and all that sort of stuff. The difference between our love poetry and their love poetry was they mentioned the God that they would have. And, you know, the gods were looking down on them and, you know, whatever that God was that they did. But in our love poetry, God's not mentioned in this book. And it's quite amazing. It's exactly like Esther, God's not mentioned. And so this one doesn't have anything. Even the language of Old Testament is not in this text. Covenant, priests, altar, sacrifices. The total absence of any religious words or theology of the Old Testament in this text is quite confronting, because God is focusing in not on that stuff. He's saying, let's focus in on love, and it's beautiful. Now, the structure of this book, you're going to go through some beautiful structures. I just love that it's set out in he, she, friends. It's just a beautiful, simple way of reading it. Key themes: love and desire. Highlight all the fruit, all the figs, all the nature, all the vineyards, all the mountains. This expression, really jump into this text. This beautiful story of whether you read it as Christ and the church, God and Israel, or two lovers just expressing their desire for one another, have a great adventure in this beautiful creative book in the Song of Songs.